Howdy. Welcome to my February reading vlog. So we are only a few days into the month. I have already started a book and I already have 2 books that I have on my TBR. So the book that I've already started is Court by Tracy Wolff. It's the 5th book in that Crave series, that really long one with all the Vampire Diaries, Twilight, fantasy style crap going on in it. It's like a supernatural academy. So I'm on that. I'm finally halfway through it, 50%, because the audiobook is 24 hours long. That's a bit ridiculous, but I am finally halfway through that. And my other 2 books that I want to read this month, I have taken out Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. It's the first in that romance series about, I believe, all the sisters meeting somebody, and I've heard that series recommended a lot as actually good romance, actually good smut. So since I am trying out more romance books this year, I thought that I would try out that series because it seems really interesting. And the other book that I plan to read this month is for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster, and I believe I'm going to try getting The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, which is the first book in the Chronicles of Narnia. That's the only book I have to read on the poster, and luckily people have said that that is the best book in that series. So I'm looking forward to reading that. I think it'll be light, I think it'll be easy since it's a children's book. And I'm not sure what else I plan to read this month, but those are my plans so far. I'll let you know how Court is so far. It's crazy and ridiculous, so I will talk about that later. Just a small mini reading update because I haven't really done one of those in a very long time. So I have already started and finished one book, and that is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. I thought that for February I could read a romance, and Talia Hibbert is a Black author, so I thought that I should be reading more Black authors this month, and I ended up giving the book 4 stars. I liked the characters well enough. I thought that their family dynamics were really sweet, and I'm glad that there was a lot of explanation for why they felt certain ways, why they were insecure about certain things, and I liked that the conflict wasn't this huge end-all be-all. It was simply a fight that affected both of them for different reasons. The intimate scenes were also not cringy, which is why I'm giving it 4 stars. It was a very good romance and had very good sex scenes. And now, currently, I am listening to the audiobook of The Women of Troy by Pat Barker, which is the sequel to her book, The Silence of the Girls, which is essentially just a retelling of the Trojan War or the Trojan Cycle from the point of view of the character Briseis, who was Achilles' slave wife, essentially, and was the main cause of the conflict in the Iliad. This book is continuing on from her perspective as consequences from the previous novel, but it is also in the perspective of Pyrrhus, who is Achilles' son and was involved in the sack of Troy and the killing of Priam and his family. So far, I have sort of the same issues as I did with the previous book, which was that it was very British, and I think that's just very weird for an ancient Greek story. Like, there's modern British slang and British words, and they talk like they're all British. But that was just a very minor critique, especially since I was reading it on page. Having an actual British narrator narrate the Britishness of this ancient Greek tale is actually a bit smoother to get through, and I feel like it is easier on me to have it as an audiobook than have it on page. And so far, less has happened in it. It started with the sack of Troy and the Trojan horse, but now they're just dealing with very minor squabbles about who buried Priam when he wasn't supposed to be buried, and Briseis dealing with the fact that she is pregnant. It's just very, like, middle book. It's a very middle book because I know there's going to be a third book. So these sequels always just have this sort of problem with them where they're just kind of middling, they're going through the motions, and it's not as exciting as any other events from the previous novels. I also forgot to mention that I gave Court 2 stars because that was very, very long, very, very tedious, and very, very ridiculous. Like, I can't even begin to tell you what the family tree of this cast of characters looks like now, because Grace realized she's like the daughter of a god and a god gargoyle and the god of chaos, and that she's actually cousins with her boyfriend's sister, so they're all related now in like a convoluted, it's not incest way that straight people like to do. And it was very disgusting, but also very confusing because I have no clue how to even explain it. Plus, I think that the ex-boyfriend and the gay character should get together, but the author is just sort of not doing that. And I'm a little, frustrated by that. I would like to see that happen because that's just a brilliant way to solve the love triangle that they set up in the first book. I mean, she's with the British brother now, the British brother and the American brother, even though they were raised by the same people. Oh, and the secret sister's British too, so I don't know what Jackson's problem is. And I'm not even sure if I mentioned it here. I'm all over the place this month. I gave The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe 3 stars. It's a simple children's book. You will hear about that more in my 100 Epic Reads reading vlog. So that's it. That's my update for now. Bigger update. Read more books in this small break. Been having kind of a month, but everything hopefully should be okay now. So I will see you my next update. am here again to give you another reading update because another week has gone by and I am reading 2 new books. So I ended up giving The Women of Troy by Pat Barker 2 stars because it used the R word multiple times, which is great, obviously. Like, what the hell? Come on. It was 2021 when this book was published. You need to do better. That's bullshit. Plus, it just suffered being a middle book in a trilogy, and it didn't really add anything interesting to the Trojan cycle because I've studied that extensively. And with these books, with these retellings, you need to sort of add something different, and this book tries to be the women's perspective version, but it ends up just being slut-shamey. It ends up just, everyone just hates Helen brutally. There's no nuance. And Briseis also heavily judges women by their appearance and their actions when she's supposed to be a women for the women, you know? And it just fails ultimately at being what it set out to be. But on to the books that I am currently reading. So I'm currently reading 2 books. The first book is The House of Hunger by Alexis Hendersen, which is this vampire story about this girl who used to live in the slums, but then she goes to this job that she can get called a blood maid, where the rich will just drink the blood out of your body. So while they might not literally be vampires, it's vampire adjacent, and so far, pretty exciting stuff. She only just got to the house, only just met the person who drinks her blood, and I think there's going to be some political drama going on. I think there's going to be some house drama between all the servants. So far I'm really liking it, and it seems to be queer, so I'm really liking that. And I'm only about halfway through that so far. The second book that I'm reading is Reluctant Immortals by Gwendolyn Kiste. And it is about Lucy from Dracula and Bertha from Jane Eyre, and they are companions who are living in the 1960s in America, and they are dealing with the men that abuse them and turn them into immortals in the first place. I am about halfway done that story, and I don't think that I'm liking it so far. First thing is, they don't really explain why the characters of Jane Eyre are all immortal and present. There is very vague undertones, and I think I'm supposed to be catching on to what they are, but I would just prefer a flat-out explanation. Like, you can't just keep saying Rochester is a monster, and that's how he's able to live so long. Like, Dracula is Dracula, he's a vampire. It makes sense for him to be immortal. Why is Rochester such a bad guy? Like, yeah, he was a rich man. What did he do? Like, deals with the devil? You need to give me more than just, like, a vague, just essence of, like, man bad for me to get why they are all immortal. And also, it is doing a trope that I hate where a vampire refuses to eat. I understand the metaphor. I completely understand all of the reasons why someone wouldn't want to drink human blood and kill them, yada yada yada. But it's tired, and I really don't like the idea that it's pushing, in connection to eating and, being a bad person for eating. It's just, it's a whole thing, and I don't even know if I should be connecting those dots, but that's how I'm reading it, and I'm tired of this trope. I just want vampires to enjoy being vampires sometimes. So that is my update for now. I want to try to read 1 more book this month, but we'll see when we get there. And I will probably see you at the wrap-up. This was my look for Comic-Con. Okay, so first things first, I went to Value Village and I got a few things. The first thing I got was a sweater, but it's in the wash right now. I'll show it to you later. Every sound in the world is happening right now, so I'll be quick. I got this VHS of Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School for $1.99. I got Gone with the Wind for my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster for $2.99. I got the hardcover of The Vampire Armand by Anne Rice for $5.99. Now I have 3 copies of this book because I have the mass market paperback, I have a sun-damaged larger paperback, and now I have the official hardback. And finally, my favorite pull of the day. I can't believe that I got this. I'm still freaking out. I'm so excited over it. I got These Violent Delights by Mika Nemerever. It's the hardback, like beautiful, pristine, $40 in Canada edition for $5.99. This is one of my favorite books of all time. This is my favorite book I read last year, and I'm so excited. Okay, here we are finally at the wrap-up. Finally, this month I don't have any physical copies to show you, so you're just gonna have to enjoy my final thoughts without a visual. This month was both really boring and also really hard. I had a lot of issues with my dog getting sick and not really working as much as I did during the holidays. So my reading sort of reflects that. I feel like I'm a little bit in a lower mood, but hopefully with spring coming, my mood will improve. So I read 7 books this month, and we will start off with my 100 Epic Reads of a Lifetime poster book, and that was The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. I'm giving that book 3 stars because obviously it just is what it is. It's a children's fantasy story, and if you've seen the film, you've basically read the book. It's very similar. I thought it was very cute, and I'm still haunted by Two-Legged Aslan. I hate that. I also listened to the audiobook of Court by Tracy Wolff, which is the 4th book in the Crave series. Essentially this wild supernatural academy story with like gargoyles and gods and vampires that are British and vampires that are American, yet they're brothers. Now they're all related in this tangled web of a family tree where like gods had babies, vampire kings had babies, and now Grace is the half-sister of Hudson's sister. So Grace and Hudson are very distantly related. Why do book series love to do that? I don't understand. Anyway, 2 stars for that one. Next, I read Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is this new romance series that people in the book community have been talking about, so I decided to jump up on the wagon, and I enjoyed it for what it was. It was a very good romance. It wasn't this, like, end of the world if they're not together thing. It was sort of, like, interpersonally based. You figure out why both of them act the way they do, and they fit together very well, and I thought that the romantic scenes weren't too embarrassing, so I did enjoy that one for the most part, and for a romance book, it's getting 4 stars from me. I then listened to the audiobook of The Women of Troy by Pat Barker, which is the 2nd book in that series about the Trojan cycle, and it suffers from being the middle book. There was nothing really going on in it aside from a mini arc where Achilles' son learns about guest friendship, and Briseis deals with women in her circle having babies and getting pregnant and stuff like that. For someone who's supposed to be like the feminist in the group of the Greek myth, Briseis really judges women, insults their appearance, their actions, their sexual escapades, and uses the R word twice. So for that, it's bumped down to a 2 star. I will try reading the 3rd book when it comes out, but I'm just not as interested in it as I was. I then read Reluctant Immortals by Gwendolyn Kiste, and I ended up giving that one 3 stars. I just think that I didn't really enjoy the premise and what it
did with it. I think the idea of putting characters from Gothic fiction together is always really interesting, but I'm just not a huge fan of Hollywood in the 1960s. I'm not a huge fan of the way people retroactively look back on that decade and say, oh, it's the beginning of the end, everything's dying and decaying, it's the end of culture as we know it, because I disagree with that. And I also just, like I said before, didn't like the whole Jane Eyre connection. I just didn't understand why they were immortal and could interact with like the ghosts and stuff at the end. I don't know. I just didn't like it as much as other people might like it, but I feel like people will really like this story. It's a very interesting take on both Dracula and Jane Eyre, an interesting setting to put them in, an interesting premise, and check it out if you don't really think my review is doing it justice. I then read House of Hunger by Alexis Hendersen, which was a really interesting horror novel about a girl who goes to live in this rich castle where the rich will drink the blood of the people they've assigned as blood maids. They are not vampires, they're just rich people who literally will drink the blood out of your body. Very, very interesting stuff. I thought it was going to be more politically based with like marriages and court dynamics, but it turned out to be a very personal story between all of the blood maids and who has purchased them and the horror that she becomes and the monster she truly is, aside from drinking blood. Very interesting stuff. I enjoyed the story very, very, very much, and I gave the book 4 stars. And finally, to tie my month together, I listened to Sorry Not Sorry by Naya Rivera. She was Santana on Glee, as well as being an 80s and 90s child star. It's very hard to read this book now since she recently passed away, and I just think that it made the book a little bit harder to read just because she kept talking about, you know, the life she wanted to live and how much she loved her son and everything, and that was very, very hard to hear. One criticism of the book is that she is very heavily judgmental of people who do drugs and are addicted to drugs. I understand her friend Corey Monteith died that way, but throughout the book, her main insult for people, even if they aren't drug users, is crackhead or meth head, which I found a little bit in poor taste. So aside from that, it was a very good memoir and very interesting to read about her life in that sort of fun way where she tries to make light of it. And that was all of my reading that I did this month. Look forward to next month. I'm not sure what I'm going to be reading aside from my poster read, so stay tuned for that. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all next month. Bye-bye.